Welcome to Varis Vignettes. I'm Lee Varis, your host in this series of tutorials on digital photography in Photoshop. For this project, we will start here with this digital capture of a California poppy field, and we will end up here, a much more dramatic and compelling version. We're going to be utilizing primarily layer modes and advanced blending options to remove color casts and enhance saturation, contrast, and detail. Along the way, we're going to be working with RGB channels, the channel mixer, LAB color mode, and we're going to use color overlay and luminosity adjustment layers, as well as layer masks. So let's begin. Here we are. We have a nice picture as it is, but it needs some more contrast, and it could use a little more pop, a little more saturation. The sky is a little weak, and there's a slight pink cast in the clouds. For this first part, we're going to work on the pink cast clouds, and we're going to learn a bit about advanced blending options and layer apply modes. So I'm going to start by removing the color cast in the clouds, and I'm going to go down here to the bottom of the layers palette or panel and create a new fill or adjustment layer here. If I click on this little icon, I get this flyaway where I can choose a number of different adjustment types, and for our purposes right now we're going to use the solid color adjustment layer, and I get the color picker here. I'm going to select a gray color here because I want to neutralize the color of the clouds. I want an absolutely neutral color, so if I just push my cursor along the left edge of the color picker here, I can end up at a zero saturation. My RGB values 123, 123, 123. That's a neutral gray. Click OK, and there you have it. I've completely eliminated the pink cast in the clouds. And of course, I've also completely covered up the image with this solid color adjustment layer. Now the idea here is that I want to be able to see through the gray color and see the value of the underlying image. Right now, my apply mode here is normal. And you can find under the layers tab here this flyaway menu, which allows you to change the apply modes for the layer that you have selected. So if I move from normal to color, you can see now I have a gray color image, but the value of the underlying layer, which is my original image, is showing through. So if I turn off the gray color layer, I can see the full color version of the image. Now what I'd really like to do is only have this gray color applied to the clouds, and I'll see the full color of the rest of the image here. So how do we achieve that? Well, the answer lies in the channel structure of the image. Let's look at this. As you know, an RGB image is actually made up of 3 different grayscale versions. Here's the red channel version, here's the green channel, and the blue channel. And of course, as expected, the blue channel in the sky, which is all blue, it's really white in the sky area. The green channel has a little bit more detail, but all the contrast and separation in the clouds is in the red channel. So we're going to take advantage of that in how we control how this gray color is applied to the underlying image. To understand how that works, I'm going to switch back from color to normal here, and we're going to look at how we can control this solid color adjustment layer using advanced blending options. So I'm going to go to my layer options flyaway here and select blending options, and we get this layer style dialog. We're really primarily interested in the middle section of this, and right down here at the bottom, this is where we're going to work the magic on this particular technique. So right now you see it says blend if gray. This represents the overall luminosity of the image, but we can also select the red channel, green channel, or blue channel to use as our control for how the gray layer, the solid color gray layer, which is this layer, is applied over the underlying image, which is represented by this underlying layer. So you can see we have a gradient that goes from black to red, and this represents the value structure in that red channel. We're going to use the underlying image to control how that solid color gray is applied. If I select this little black triangle and move it to the right, we're going to start revealing more and more of the underlying image. Wherever it is darker than this point in the gradient, I will see through the top layer and reveal the underlying layer. So let's move this over even more to the right until we can see that the gray color is only covering up the clouds. So everything darker than about this point in the red channel will allow us to see through that gray layer and reveal the full color of the underlying layer. The problem here is that the transition between color and the neutral gray is rather abrupt. And that's because it's just at this one value point is when it breaks and shows us the underlying image. So the trick here is to hold down the Option or Alt key and break this little triangle apart. Now we create a transition where it fades from solid gray in the lighter values to transparent where we can see through to the underlying image. So I'll just I'll just soften it up a bit. And now, returning to the top of this dialog, we can change the blend mode back from normal to color. And now we have this solid color gray layer is really just taking out that pink cast. You can see if I toggle it on and off, I'm replacing that pink tinge with just a gray color for the clouds. Now if we toggle this on and off, I think you might be able to see on your screen there's a slight desaturation happening in here in these flowers right about in this area. If we can see that a little bit. And in order to eliminate that completely, I'm going to paint into the layer mask for this adjustment layer using a gradient. So I've got the gradient tool selected over here. I'm going to put black as my foreground color by toggling here, clicking on the little bent arrows here. Put black in my foreground color and select the second option here, which is foreground to transparent. So I'm going to paint in the layer mask over here, which is selected. I'm going to start, and wherever I start, it's going to be black in the layer mask, and thus it's going to protect this foreground area. And I'll hold down the Shift key to constrain the gradient to a perfect perpendicular here. So I drag a little bit, and I've placed this layer mask in here, which protects all this foreground area. So now I have my gray color is only affecting the pink tinge in the clouds. We've looked at this technique of using the advanced blending options to control how a layer is applied to the underlying layer. And we're going to be using this over and over again. It's a very powerful technique that allows us a lot of control over how we adjust the image using these special layer apply mode techniques. So stay tuned, and we're going to work on this further in part 2.